My mother gave me up to focus on her new family. Now, years later, she wants to reconnect because something has happened. That Tuesday evening in March should have been a triumph. I had just secured my promotion to senior project manager, a culmination of relentless effort and late nights. My heart swelled with a quiet pride as I dialed home, eager to share the news, to finally hear the unreserved congratulations I'd always craved. But the words were barely out of my mouth before my mother, Deborah, neatly severed them. "That's wonderful, dear," she chimed, her tone betraying a practiced urgency. "But I need to talk about something important. Your sister Vanessa and her family are struggling with the mortgage again. Robert lost another contract, and the kids need new school supplies. Can you send them $3,000 this month?" The familiar weight settled in my chest, a cold, leaden certainty. I paused, the celebratory bubbles of my achievement deflating into a familiar, bitter reality. This wasn't an anomaly. It was a recurring nightmare, a tired script rehearsed countless times since Vanessa married Robert 5 years ago. I had become their unofficial bank, my door a revolving one for every manufactured crisis, always met with an outstretched hand. "Mom," I finally managed, a tremor in my voice. "I just told you about my promotion. Could we maybe celebrate that for a minute?" Her response was immediate, sharp, and dismissive. "Don't be selfish. Family helps family. Vanessa has 2 children to think about. You're single with no responsibilities. The least you can do is help your sister." The words struck like a physical blow, stripping away any lingering hope of recognition. A glacial coldness seized my chest, a deeper chill than usual. Then, my father Gerald's voice, amplified by the speakerphone, joined the chorus of dismissal. "Your mother's right," he affirmed, his tone devoid of warmth. "Vanessa's family will always come first in this house. That's how it works. You've always been independent. Never needed us much anyway. So, you're naturally last on the priority list." The words didn't just hang in the air, they solidified, stark and unmistakable, a brutal confession delivered with the detachment of a weather report. No attempt to soften them, no pretense of kindness. "Good to know," I managed, my voice a thin thread. "Thanks for clarifying where I stand." Deborah sighed dramatically. "Oh, don't be dramatic. We love you both equally. It's just that Vanessa needs more support right now. You understand, don't you?" My answer was clipped, final. "Absolutely. Crystal clear. I need to go." Before either of them could utter another word, I disconnected the call. My apartment, usually a haven, suddenly felt cavernous and impossibly quiet. I gazed around the space I'd meticulously earned and furnished, the life I'd painstakingly built entirely on my own merit. Every small triumph, every hard-won achievement, had been met with lukewarm acknowledgment at best, invariably followed by a veiled or direct request for money or time to assist Vanessa with some new predicament. My childhood flickered through my mind like a documentary I'd been forced to rewatch too many times. Vanessa got the larger bedroom because she needed space for her art supplies. I got the converted attic. Her college tuition came from a combination of their savings and my grandparents' inheritance, a full share that, by any measure of fairness, should have been divided between us. I was told community college would suffice for me, since I was naturally frugal and independent. When I transferred to a 4-year university on my own dime, juggling 3 jobs to cover the costs, my graduation day saw barely half the fanfare of Vanessa's. She celebrated with extended family and catered food. I got dinner at a chain restaurant with only our immediate family, where Deborah spent most of the meal on the phone, coordinating Vanessa's upcoming engagement party. The pattern, once subtle, was now blindingly obvious. I had been perfectly cast as the capable one, the self-sufficient one who didn't need help, which conveniently meant all resources, all attention, flowed inexorably toward my sister. And I, in my desperate yearning for approval that never quite materialized, had played my part. That night, something irrevocably shifted. I opened my laptop and started a spreadsheet, a meticulous ledger of every dollar I'd funneled to Vanessa over the years. Money for her wedding, down payment assistance for their house, car repairs, credit card debt, medical bills, vacations they demonstrably couldn't afford. The accumulating total made me physically nauseous. $47,000 across 5 years. I, living in a modest apartment and driving a 12-year-old sedan, had been funding their lifestyle. My savings account, which by all rights should have been robust given my income, looked tragically anemic. Meanwhile, Vanessa's social media feed was a constant stream of updates from restaurants I couldn't dream of, adorned in clothes I'd never splurge on. The clarity was brutal, but necessary. Decisions, hard and unyielding, crystallized in my mind that night, poised to reshape everything. First, I opened a new bank account at a different institution, a fortress into which every cent of my income would now flow, completely separate from any account my parents might access. Second, I changed my phone number and email address, providing the new contacts solely to my employer and a handful of trusted friends utterly unconnected to my family. Third, I scheduled an appointment with a financial advisor to finally discuss the investment strategies I'd so long postponed. The fourth decision was the most difficult. I drafted an email to my parents and Vanessa, a concise declaration that I would no longer be providing financial assistance of any kind. I outlined the total amount I'd given over the years, noting it was more than sufficient. Going forward, they would need to manage their finances independently, just as I'd always done. I didn't send it immediately. Instead, I waited. 3 days later, Deborah called my old number. I let it ring, then saw the voicemail. She demanded to know why I was ignoring her, reiterating Vanessa's urgent need for money. 2 more calls came that week, each increasingly irritated in tone. Vanessa, too, sent texts to my old number. Mom says you're being weird. Did something happen? Also, Robert's truck needs new tires. Can you help us out? Maybe $400. I watched the messages pile up like snow against the windowpane, each one confirming the chilling truth. They didn't actually care about my life, my feelings, or my promotion. I was a resource to be tapped, nothing more. A month passed. My new phone number remained wonderfully, blessedly peaceful and quiet. I threw myself into my job with a renewed, almost ferocious focus. No longer exhausted by the ceaseless mental drain of being everyone's financial backup plan, my work improved noticeably. My boss commented on my increased productivity and creativity. More importantly, I started therapy, a crucial step to process the years of being overlooked and undervalued. Dr. Morrison, with her calm demeanor and piercing insights, helped me unpick patterns I'd been too close to recognize: the parentification, the scapegoating, the insidious expectation that I should be grateful for scraps of attention while providing unlimited support in return. What you're describing is a family system where you were assigned a role very early, she explained during one session. The responsible one, the one who doesn't need anything. That role served their needs but cost you tremendously. I confess, I kept thinking if I just helped enough, proved myself enough, they'd finally see me. Her reply was a painful truth. And instead, every time you helped, you reinforced the dynamic. You taught them that your needs don't matter, and their demands will always be met. The insight hurt deeply, but it also freed something vital inside me. I wasn't wrong for wanting basic acknowledgement. They were wrong for withholding it, for exploiting my desperate desire to belong. 2 months after I'd gone silent, my parents showed up at my apartment. I watched through the peephole as Gerald knocked repeatedly, growing more visibly frustrated with each unanswered attempt. "We know you're in there," Deborah called out, her voice shrill. "This is ridiculous. Are your parents opening the door?" I remained silent and utterly still, a stone. Eventually they left. The next day, a certified letter arrived. They'd obtained my address from my landlord, who would later face a complaint for that flagrant privacy violation. The letter was 3 pages of expertly crafted guilt-tripping and accusations. I was being selfish, childish, and cruel. Vanessa's family was in crisis. Robert had lost his job entirely, and they were facing foreclosure. As the only family member with financial stability, I had a moral obligation to help. My refusal was devastating to everyone and showed a shocking lack of character. There was no acknowledgement of the conversation that had sparked my withdrawal, no apology for the always last comment. Just demands wrapped in the saccharine language of family duty. I filed the letter away and continued with my life. My apartment became a sanctuary in ways it never had before. Without the constant anxiety of incoming requests and the crushing mental load of managing everyone else's problems, I found myself actually enjoying my space. I began to redecorate slowly, intentionally, choosing pieces that resonated with me rather than the cheapest functional options. A velvet reading chair in deep emerald green. Art prints from a local gallery featuring abstract landscapes. Plants that demanded actual care and attention, which I now had the emotional bandwidth to provide. Work became more than just a paycheck. Without the background hum of family drama, my mind was clearer, sharper. I volunteered for a challenging project redesigning our client interface system, something I would have been too mentally exhausted to attempt before. My contribution stood out. The senior vice president, Catherine Walsh, personally complimented my innovative approach during a company-wide meeting. Your perspective on user experience is exactly what this company needs more of, she told me afterward in her office. I'm putting you forward for the Advanced Leadership Training Program. It's elective, only 6 people per year, but I think you're ready. 3 months ago, I would have immediately thought about how Vanessa needed new appliances or Robert's truck required expensive repairs. Now I felt only pure, uncomplicated joy. I accepted on the spot. My social life expanded in unexpected ways. Without weekend calls demanding I come help with childcare or home repairs, I actually had time for friendships. My coworker Amy invited me to her book club, a group of women who met monthly to discuss novels and drink wine. I'd always declined before, worried I'd need to be available for family emergencies. The first meeting was at a member's home, a cozy townhouse with bookshelves lining every wall. 8 women sat in a circle, discussing a novel about generational trauma and family secrets. The irony was not lost on me. What did you think about the protagonist's decision to cut off her mother? The host, Linda, asked the group. I'd been quiet most of the evening, nervous about sharing in a new social setting, but something about the question loosened my tongue. I think she waited too long, I said. Everyone turned to look at me. She kept hoping her mother would change, kept giving chances that were never going to lead anywhere different. The pattern was clear from the beginning. That's an interesting take, Amy said carefully. Most people struggle with cutting off family, even when it's justified. Struggle and action are different things, I replied, finding my voice. You can struggle with the decision, but still make it. Sometimes the struggling is just postponing the inevitable because we're afraid of being seen as the bad guy. The conversation moved on, but afterward, Linda pulled me aside. That was pretty profound. You sound like you're speaking from experience. I hesitated, then figured honesty couldn't hurt with people who had no connection to my family. I recently cut off contact with my parents and sister. They made it very clear where I ranked in their priorities, so I adjusted my involvement accordingly. Linda nodded slowly. My brother hasn't spoken to me in 4 years because I wouldn't co-sign a loan for him. He tells everyone I'm selfish and cruel, but that loan would have bankrupted me, and he had no intention of paying it back. How did you handle the guilt? Therapy. Lots of therapy. And eventually realizing that people who love me wouldn't ask me to destroy myself to convenience them. She squeezed my arm. You made the right call. I can already tell. That conversation was the first of many. As I opened up selectively about my situation, I discovered how many people had similar stories. The friend who'd been expected to fund her cousin's wedding. The colleague whose parents demanded she give up her career to care for an able-bodied sibling. The neighbor who'd finally blocked her entire extended family after years of exploitation. These weren't rare situations. They were common, just rarely discussed because the people enforcing these dynamics controlled the narrative. My public post had been risky, but it had also been clarifying. I couldn't be gaslit about my experiences when I documented them so thoroughly. Around the 2-month mark, I did something I'd been avoiding. I logged into the old bank account I'd shared information about with my parents, the one I no longer used. I wanted to see if there had been any unauthorized access. The account was empty. Not just normal empty from me transferring the money out, but completely drained, including a small amount I'd deliberately left to keep it open. Someone had withdrawn every cent, triggering an overdraft that had accumulated fees. The account was now $200 in the negative. My hands shook as I pulled up the transaction history, 3 withdrawals at ATMs near my parents' house, using my debit card and PIN. They must have kept the spare card I'd given them years ago for emergencies. This was theft, plain and simple. I screenshot everything and sent it to Richard, my attorney, immediately. His response came within the hour. This is criminal. File a police report, and I'll prepare the civil paperwork. Do you want to press charges? Did I? The question sat heavy in my chest. Pressing charges against my own parents felt like crossing a line I couldn't uncross, but they'd already crossed it by stealing from me. The money itself didn't matter much, but the violation did. I called Richard back. What happens if I file a report, but don't press charges? The report goes on record. If they try anything else, there's documentation of a pattern. You can also use it to get the bank to refund the overdraft fees since you weren't the one who created them. But without pressing charges, there's no real consequence for them. Let's start with the report. I decided. I'll decide about charges later. The police officer who took my statement was a woman in her 40s named Officer Denise Matthews. She listened to the whole story without interrupting, her expression neutral but not unkind. You're not the first person I've seen this happen to, she said when I finished. Family financial abuse is more common than people realize. The hard part is that victims often don't want to prosecute because of the relationship. I don't know what I want yet, I admitted. That's fair. The report is filed either way. If they contact you about this, don't respond directly. Let your attorney handle it, and change any other PINs or passwords they might have access to. I left the police station feeling strange, lighter maybe, or just more clear-headed. They'd stolen from me, proving beyond any doubt that I was nothing more than a resource to them. Any lingering guilt about my decision evaporated in the face of that stark reality. Richard sent a third cease and desist letter, this one mentioning the police report and the evidence of theft. He stopped just short of threatening criminal charges, but the implication was clear. If they continued any form of contact or harassment, I wouldn't hesitate to pursue every legal option available. The silence that followed was absolute. No calls to Richard's office, no letters, no attempts to contact mutual acquaintances. Either they were finally taking me seriously, or they were regrouping for another strategy. I used the quiet to dive deeper into the leadership training program at work. The curriculum covered advanced project management, conflict resolution, and strategic planning. But the most valuable part was the cohort itself, 5 other rising professionals, all hungry to grow and improve. We formed a study group that met weekly, workshopping real challenges from our departments. One evening, over coffee after a particularly intense session, a cohort member named Marcus asked about my problem-solving approach. You think 3 steps ahead of everyone else, he observed. Like you're always anticipating the next complication before it happens. Where do you learn that? Family training, I said dryly. When you grow up managing other people's chaos, you get good at seeing where things are headed. Sounds exhausting. It was. I don't do it anymore. At least, not for them. Marcus nodded thoughtfully. I had a similar situation with my ex-wife's family. They treated me like an ATM with a pulse. Took me years to realize I was funding their lifestyle while barely scraping by myself. What made you stop? She asked me to refinance my house to pay for her brother's gambling debts. That was the line I couldn't cross. I filed for divorce instead. Do you regret it? Not even a little. Best decision I ever made. You. I thought about my family, about the constant low-grade misery of being undervalued and exploited, about the profound peace I'd found in the months since walking away. No regrets at all. The leadership program culminated in a capstone project where each participant had to present a strategic initiative to the executive team. I proposed a mentorship program pairing senior staff with promising junior employees, complete with budget projections and success metrics. Catherine Walsh approved it on the spot, with implementation starting the following quarter. "You've grown tremendously these past few months," she told me during my performance review. "Whatever you're doing differently, keep doing it. Your work has always been solid, but now there's a confidence and clarity that wasn't there before." I knew exactly what had changed. Without the constant drain of family obligations and emotional manipulation, I had energy and focus to invest in myself. The difference was staggering. My dating life, previously non-existent due to a lack of time and emotional availability, suddenly opened up. I matched with Daniel on a dating app, a software engineer with kind eyes and a profile that mentioned hiking and rescue dogs. Our first date was coffee that turned into a 4-hour conversation covering everything from philosophy to favorite pizza toppings. "I should probably let you go," he said reluctantly as the cafe staff started stacking chairs around us. "But I really don't want to." "Same," I admitted. "This has been really nice. Can I see you again? Maybe actual dinner this time at a place that doesn't close at 9. I said yes without the usual anxiety about whether I'd have to cancel due to family drama. That alone felt revolutionary. By the third date, Daniel asked about my family. We were hiking a trail outside the city, the autumn leaves creating a canopy of gold and red above us. "I don't have much contact with them," I said carefully. "It's complicated. You don't have to explain if you don't want to. I just noticed you never mentioned them." Something about the way he said it, without judgment or pressure, made me want to share. We sat on a bench overlooking a valley, and I gave him the abbreviated version, the favoritism, the financial exploitation, the final conversation that ended everything. Daniel listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. "That must have been incredibly lonely, feeling invisible in your own family." The observation was so accurate and compassionate that my eyes stung. It was. For a long time, I thought something was wrong with me, that I wasn't worth prioritizing. And now I know they were wrong. I'm worth exactly as much as anyone else, including my sister. I just needed to stop accepting less. He reached for my hand. "For what it's worth, I think you're pretty remarkable. And I say that knowing you for 3 dates, which is apparently 3 more than they ever really tried." That was the moment I knew this could be something real. Someone who saw my value without me having to prove it endlessly. Someone who didn't see me as a resource, but as a person. 3 months in, I received an unexpected call at work. My old college roommate, Jennifer, who still lived in my hometown, had some information. "I ran into your mom at the grocery store," she said, sounding flustered. "She cornered me for 20 minutes asking if I knew how to reach you. She's telling people you've had some kind of breakdown and abandoned the family. Your sister is apparently spreading the same story." "What exactly are they saying?" I asked, my voice dangerously calm. "That you got fired from your job, had a mental health crisis, and cut everyone off in a paranoid episode? Your mom seemed to genuinely believe it. Or at least she's committed to the story. She wanted me to do a wellness check on you." Rage flooded through me, hot and clean. They were rewriting reality, twisting the narrative to make themselves the victims and me the unstable villain. It was breathtakingly manipulative. I got promoted, not fired. I'm completely fine. I just stopped being their ATM. Jennifer was quiet for a moment. "Your mom mentioned they might try to file for an emergency conservatorship. Something about you being unable to manage your affairs. That crossed the line from manipulative into dangerous. A conservatorship could give them legal control over my finances and decisions. Even if the attempt failed, it would create a legal mess and potentially damage my professional reputation." I thanked Jennifer and immediately called my attorney. Richard Klein specialized in family law and had dealt with similar situations. "What you're describing is financial exploitation, and the response to being cut off suggests a pattern of narcissistic family dynamics. he said after I explained everything. The conservatorship threat is likely a bluff, but we should take it seriously. I recommend a cease and desist letter as a first step, making it clear that any further harassment or defamation will result in legal action. Will that actually stop them? I asked. Sometimes the formal legal language is a wake-up call. Other times it escalates things. But either way, we establish a paper trail. If they do try for a conservatorship, we'll have documentation showing you're competent, employed, and simply declining to be exploited. The cease and desist letter went out that week. It outlined the facts clearly. I was employed, stable, and had chosen to discontinue financial support after years of one-sided obligation. Any attempts to contact me, spread false information about my mental health, or pursue legal action would be met with appropriate countermeasures, including a defamation suit. Richard included my employment verification, bank statements showing healthy finances, and a letter from Dr. Morrison confirming I was in therapy for family of origin issues, but was fully competent and stable. The response came faster than expected. Gerald called Richard's office directly, furious that I'd gotten lawyers involved in a family matter. Richard calmly informed him that financial exploitation was indeed a legal matter, and that further contact should go through him as my attorney. For 2 blessed weeks, silence prevailed. I began to hope they'd gotten the message. Then the email arrived, not to me directly, but to my work email, which they must have found through my company's website directory. It was from Vanessa, and the subject line read, "Please, I'm begging you." The message was long and emotional. She claimed to have no idea why I'd vanished, but insisted she'd always loved me and looked up to me. Her family was falling apart. Robert couldn't find work, and they were days away from losing the house. Her kids, 8-year-old Madison and 5-year-old Tyler, were scared and confused. She never asked for anything she didn't desperately need, and she couldn't understand why I'd turned my back on my own niece and nephew. The manipulation was expert level, invoking the children, claiming ignorance of any wrongdoing, positioning herself as the confused victim of my inexplicable cruelty. She had clearly learned from our mother. I forwarded the email to Richard without responding. He sent another cease and desist, this time specifically addressing workplace contact as harassment. That night, I made a decision that surprised even me. I would break my silence, but on my terms and with witnesses. I drafted a detailed letter, outlining every conversation, every request for money, every dismissive comment about my achievements, and the final, "You're always last," statement that had ended my participation in their dysfunction. I included the spreadsheet of all financial contributions. I cited specific examples of how my accomplishments had been minimized while Vanessa's had been celebrated. Then I posted it publicly on social media, where extended family, friends, and everyone from my hometown could see it. I tagged no one, named no one's profiles directly, but used their full names in the text. Anyone searching for them would find it. The document was calm, factual, and devastatingly thorough. I expressed no anger, just a clear-eyed account of a pattern that had finally become impossible to ignore. I concluded by stating that I wished everyone well but would not be resuming contact or financial support. I asked that my decision be respected. The response was immediate and explosive. My phone, which they didn't have the new number for, stayed quiet, but Jennifer kept me updated on the fallout. My Aunt Patricia, Deborah's sister, commented publicly within an hour. "I've watched this happen for years and said nothing. I'm sorry I didn't speak up sooner. You deserve better." A former family friend added, "I remember your graduation party being an afterthought compared to Vanessa's. Your parents always had an excuse, but the pattern was obvious." Others chimed in with their own observations. The narrative my parents had been spinning crumbled under the weight of witnesses who'd seen the favoritism firsthand. Vanessa responded with her own post, claiming I'd misrepresented everything and was having a breakdown. But her defensiveness only made things worse. People started asking pointed questions in the comments. Why did she need so much financial help if Robert was supposedly employed? Why were they living beyond their means and expecting family bailouts? Deborah called Richard's office again, threatening to sue me for defamation. Richard calmly explained that truth is an absolute defense against defamation, and my post had been carefully factual. If she wanted to pursue legal action, we'd be happy to present all documentation in court, including text messages, bank transfers, and witness testimony. The conversation ended quickly. For months after my initial withdrawal, the real crisis hit them. Not a manufactured emergency designed to extract money, but an actual catastrophe. Robert's parents, who had been quietly subsidizing their lifestyle along with me, died in a car accident. The estate was smaller than expected and tied up in probate. Suddenly, Vanessa and Robert faced their financial reality with no backup plan. The house went into foreclosure. Their cars were repossessed. They moved in with my parents, who were already stretched thin on Gerald's pension and Deborah's part-time retail job. Jennifer reported that the living situation was tense and getting worse. 4 adults and 2 children in a 3-bedroom house with no privacy and constant fights about money. Robert was finally working, but in a much lower-paying job than before. Vanessa had to find employment for the first time since Madison was born, a transition she was handling poorly. My parents, faced with actually supporting their daughter's family rather than just directing me to do it, were realizing how expensive the ask had always been. The arguments Jennifer overheard at the grocery store suggested deep resentment building on all sides. During one of our sessions, Dr. Morrison asked how I felt about their situation. I thought I'd feel vindicated, I admitted. Instead, I mostly feel sad. Not for them specifically, but for what could have been. If they treated me like an actual family member instead of a resource, we could have worked through their problems together. And now there's nothing to work through. They burned the bridge so thoroughly that even if they apologized, I don't think I could trust them again. 6 months after the public post, I received a handwritten letter at my office. It was from Gerald, and the handwriting was shaky. He apologized, sort of. He said they'd been wrong to take me for granted and that he understood why I'd left. He was asking not for money, but for a chance to talk. Just coffee somewhere neutral. He wanted to explain some things and hear my side without Deborah or Vanessa present. I sat with the letter for a week. Part of me was curious what he'd say. Part of me recognized this as another potential manipulation. In the end, I consulted Richard. "It's your choice entirely," he said. "If you do meet him, I'd recommend a public place and a time limit you set in advance. You're not obligated to hear him out, but sometimes closure comes from seeing how little they've actually changed." I agreed to 1 hour at a coffee shop downtown. Gerald looked older than I remembered, grayer and thinner. He ordered black coffee and sat across from me with his hands wrapped around the cup. "Thank you for coming," he started. "I wasn't sure you would." "I wasn't sure I would either," I responded coolly. "You have an hour." He nodded slowly. "Your mother and I failed you. I can see that now, living with Vanessa and Robert. The constant drama, the financial irresponsibility, the way they expect everything to be handed to them. It's exhausting. I'm aware you were never like that. Even as a kid, you figured things out on your own. Made your own lunch, did your own homework, never complained." My voice cut through his rehearsed monologue. "We didn't have to worry about you, so you decided not to bother with me at all." He flinched. "That's not how we saw it at the time. We thought we were respecting your independence. Vanessa always needed so much help, and you seemed fine." I wasn't fine. I was lonely and felt invisible. Every time I accomplished something, you barely noticed. Every time Vanessa stubbed her toe, you mobilized the entire family. "You're right." His voice was quiet. "I've been thinking about your graduation. You transferred to a university on your own, worked multiple jobs, made the dean's list, and we took you to Applebee's and talked about Vanessa's wedding the whole time." The acknowledgement, finally hearing him admit what I'd experienced, should have felt satisfying. Instead, it felt empty, too little, far too late. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked. "Because I'm living the consequences of how we raised her. She's 32 and has no concept of budgeting or sacrifice. Robert's the same way. They fight constantly, blame everyone but themselves, and expect us to fix everything. Your mother and I are drowning. There it was. The real reason for this meeting. He wasn't apologizing out of genuine remorse. He was apologizing because he needed something. You want me to help them? I knew the answer before he spoke. No. He looked surprised I'd suggested it. God, no. I'm asking you to stay away. If you came back, even just for occasional visits, they'd see it as an opening. They'd start making requests again. And honestly, I don't think I could stand watching them take advantage of you anymore. That I hadn't expected. I studied his face, trying to determine if this was another manipulation. What I want, he continued, is for you to know that we failed you and that failure is ours to carry. You built a good life without us, and you should keep it. I also want you to know that if you ever decide you want a relationship with me, separate from your mother and sister, my door is open, but I understand if that's not something you're interested in. We sat in silence for a moment. The coffee shop hummed with other conversations, other lives proceeding normally around us. I appreciate you saying this, I finally responded. But I don't think I'm ready for any kind of relationship. Maybe someday, but not now. The hurt is still too fresh. I understand. Can I ask one thing? Depends what it is. The money you gave over the years, the $47,000. Let me pay you back. Not all at once, I don't have that, but monthly installments. It's only fair. I shook my head. Keep your money. You're going to need it for the situation you're in. Consider it payment for a valuable lesson about who I can count on. His eyes were wet. You deserve so much better from us. Yeah, I said, my voice barely a whisper. I did. I left before the hour was up. Walking back to my car, I felt lighter somehow. The conversation hadn't healed anything, but it had confirmed my decision. I wasn't wrong. They had failed me, and I didn't owe them anything. 1 year after going silent, my life looked completely different. I'd been promoted again, to director level. My savings account was healthy for the first time in years. I'd started dating someone who actually prioritized me, a concept so foreign it had taken months to trust. I'd made new friends who had no connection to my family history. Jennifer reported that Vanessa and Robert had finally moved into their own apartment, small and modest. They were both working and apparently staying afloat without drama. My parents were adjusting to their emptier nest and tighter budget. Deborah had tried to send a birthday card to my office. Security intercepted it per my instructions. I never read whatever she'd written inside. Dr. Morrison and I were working on the deeper patterns now, exploring why I'd accepted the role assigned to me for so long and how to avoid repeating those dynamics in other relationships. You're not responsible for managing other people's emotions or solving their problems, she reminded me regularly. You're allowed to put yourself first. It still felt revolutionary to hear that, even a year later. I'd spent so long being last that prioritizing myself felt almost transgressive. But I was learning, slowly, carefully. I was building a life where my needs actually mattered. The ending I'd once imagined, where my family recognized my worth and apologized sincerely, never materialized. Gerald's partial admission was the closest I got, and even that came packaged with an agenda. But I found something better than their approval. I'd found my own. The revenge, if you could call it that, wasn't in their suffering. It was in my thriving. Every success I achieved without them. Every peaceful evening in my apartment, every relationship where I was valued as more than a bank account, all of it was proof that their assessment had been catastrophically wrong. I wasn't last. I wasn't least important. I was simply done accepting that position in their hierarchy. And once I stopped playing my assigned role, their whole system collapsed under its own dysfunction. Sometimes Vanessa's social media posts appeared in my feed before I remembered to block her. The pictures showed a much more modest lifestyle now. Fewer restaurant check-ins, more home-cooked meals, thrift store outfits instead of boutique hauls. She looked tired, but perhaps more grounded. I felt nothing seeing those updates. No satisfaction, no pity, just distant observation. These were strangers now, people who happened to share my DNA, but nothing else meaningful. My life moved forward without them, and every day reinforced that I'd made the right choice. The family I was building now, the chosen family of friends and partners who actually showed up for me, was everything a biological one had never been. They told me I was always last. So, I'd removed myself from their ranking system entirely and discovered I'd been first in my own life all along, just waiting for permission to claim that position. Permission I should never have needed in the first place. The best revenge wasn't making them suffer. It was proving they'd been catastrophically wrong about my worth, and then living well enough that their opinions stopped mattering entirely.